All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. As always, welcome back from your trip, Drew. We're going to talk today about everything in the NFL yesterday, the AFC North changes, the NFC South changes, two of the influx divisions in the NFL, and then we're going to talk tonight's blockbuster Steelers-Colts game, and then a bit more on the blockbuster spectrum, the World Cup. How was your weekend, Drew?
It was great, man. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hope everybody had a tremendous time watching sports over the weekend, because it was like this was like an all-timer. We're probably never going to get this again in our lifetimes, where you have a combination of World Cup soccer all morning right into college football, NFL, you name it. Like if you were looking for wall-to-wall, high leverage sports to watch, you were gifted with probably one of the greater long weekends of our lifetime.
Yeah, it's up there. I'm not sure where I'd price it relative to other long weekends, but certainly has a chance to be favorite. I think, there's lots of problems with the World Cup being in Qatar. The time zone, though, is not one of them, particularly if you live on the East Coast. My kids tend to get up around 5 a.m., which is usually hellish, but this month is actually perfect because I can watch some random Cameroon games. But we'll talk about the World Cup at the end. Let's jump into the NFC South, which is a complete car crash, the antithesis of the mighty NFC East, which right now has 4 playoff teams. So let's talk about the division price shifts first. So the Bucs came into the weekend at minus 450. They are still minus 450 because the Falcons and Saints lost. Falcons drift out to plus 700, Saints plus 1,000, and then the most interesting bet to me is the Carolina Panthers at plus 1,800. I talked myself into the Panthers plus 1,800 a month ago. We've gone through a lot of different emotions and results, and now I'm back into the same spot of talking myself into the Carolina Panthers at plus 1,800 again. What do you make of this market?
I have a very tough time trying to make a case against the favorites here, and it's just the Buccaneers are just walking in total luck, full on luck box all season long so far this year. Everything has gone wrong for them from an injury standpoint. They're losing games they should easily have won. Yesterday, a good example, could have easily put that game away, but just, pretty uninspiring play calling offensively, a little bit out of sorts here. But no one else is challenging them. Like Falcons, and the fact that the Saints are flat at 10-1 from yesterday to today, even though yesterday they got shut out by the Niners and just really did not have a very functional performance at all, and people are still like, still 10-1. It just speaks to the fact that if any of these teams towards the bottom can get any kind of steam, any kind of momentum generating, and put a little bit of pressure on the Bucs, then we might have ourselves a little bit of a conversation. The Bucs still have to obviously take care of business in division if they expect to win. This is turned into an absolute hot mess of a division. Bucs, I'm looking at a stretch in weeks 14, 15, 16, Niners, Bengals, Cardinals. Interesting little 3-game stretch there. If they don't get right by that week 14 matchup against the Niners, I think then the door would be open. Saints aren't the team I would back. Falcons aren't the team I would back. I think the Panthers, just based on price, would be the only look. Although I just, it's so much has to go right. It feels like a little too late for those guys.
Yes, had DJ Moore not removed his helmet in Atlanta, I would be feeling much better. If the Panthers instead were 5-7, then I think they would be really in the mix. Now they need some breaks to go their way. At the same time, though, their schedule the rest of the way, they play the Seahawks, who did not look good yesterday defensively at all and are very vulnerable. The Steelers, the Lions, and then Saints and Bucs. So those are winnable games. And I think if the Panthers go 4-1, which is obviously not very likely, but within the realms of possibility, if they go 4-1, including a win over the Bucs, they finish at 8-9 with the tiebreak over the Bucs. They inflict another loss upon the Bucs, and then the Bucs would have to go 3-2 just to get 8-9, and then they would lose on the tiebreak. So look, a lot has to go right, but I just think that the Panthers, they should be more like 11-1, 12-1, as opposed to 18-1. So that would be my bet, but it's not the most inspiring to ride with Sam Darnold. I think there are probably some higher end teams in the AFC North, which is, along with the AFC East, I guess, the other division that's really still in flux. And the Ravens, they go from -500 to -250 after the origin superhero story of Trevor Lawrence on that last drive. The Bengals, who pull out a win over the Titans, they drop from +400 to +200. The Browns and the Steelers aren't realistic at this point. Do you like the Bengals at +200?
So I have a lot of Bengals in pocket from earlier this season, and we had a couple of cracks in the last handful of weeks to get even better prices on the Bengals if you felt like they could ultimately, steal this division. Right now, they have a very, very difficult uphill battle because they have the second most difficult schedule remaining, whereas Baltimore looking at the second easiest schedule remaining. So huge imbalance here between those two. In terms of strength of remaining opponents. I think I'm fine ruling out the Browns and the Steelers here, even though I like, there are certainly things to try to make a case for an upside for both of those teams. I just don't think enough ground can be made up at this point with both the Ravens and the Bengals having 7 wins. Ravens, they're not inspiring a lot of confidence. Yesterday's loss kind of capitalized, or really kind of pointed out a lot of the things that you may have had in the back of your head about, this team just isn't winning in convincing fashion. Like, that game should have been in hand before them, long before the end. It took, a fortunate fumble recovery and a short field for them to have the opportunity to try to win that game. And then, as you mentioned, they let it slip through their fingers again. That's what, the 6th time it feels like this season, even though they only have 4 losses. I feel like all 4 were, from ahead in the 4th quarter. So Ravens are doing it a weird way this year. And it's not like you can expect a lot of, there's no one coming to the rescue on the offensive side of the ball in terms of just player personnel, getting healthy and providing that bump. Whereas Jamar Chase still could come back here for the Bengals and be a meaningful factor down the stretch. So more dynamic offense, better, more well-coordinated defense. Just the tougher schedule is keeping me from firing more on the Bengals here. But I think both these teams are going to the playoffs.
Yes, I agree. I think with Baltimore, I still have no idea why they didn't trade for a wide receiver at the deadline, why they didn't sign a wide receiver in the offseason, instead just content to roll now with the DeMarcus Robinson and Devin Duvernay show. Mark Andrews didn't have his best game yesterday either. I think this probably on face value, these prices would surprise people, -250 versus +200, given that they're both 7-4 right now. But it's not just the schedule, which is a massive factor. The fact that the Bengals have to play Chiefs, Browns with Deshaun Watson, at the Bucks, at the Patriots, Bills, Ravens. That is an absolute monster. That is a murderer's row of teams. Whereas the Ravens, they're -8 against the Broncos this week, which I think, for all the misgivings we have about the Ravens, that would be my best bet of all the early lines. I think that will close double digits with how bad Denver has looked. And then Steelers, Browns, Falcons, Steelers. So it's not as nearly as intimidating for Baltimore. And then the other thing is, and this is the real problem with Cincinnati, is that they're 1-3 in the division. And for tiebreak, that includes a loss to Baltimore. So they also have losses against the Steelers and the Browns. So even if the Bengals beat Baltimore and square the ledger at 1-1, they're not going to have the tiebreak. So they need to finish with a better record than Baltimore while playing basically the average team that they're going to play is like the Ravens.
Yes.
Still really good. Whereas the average team the Ravens has to play like the Steelers. So that's the difference. And that's why the price is what it is. So even though you want to like the Bengals at +200, just can't get involved at that price. And we'll see, if the Steelers, if they want to get involved, if they want to throw their hat in the ring by beating the Colts tonight, I just think they're too far back. And so are the Browns. The Browns are still the weirdest team in the league to me, and will be the rest of the season now that we have Deshaun Watson too. I think it's the underrated story the whole year that the Browns have gotten basically Deshaun Watson level quarterback play from Jacoby Brissett, not that far off, and they're 4-7 and needed a miraculous OT win. Not quite Deshaun Watson level, but not that far off it. So, yeah, they're a strange team and one we'll talk about a lot. All right, Drew, download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. All right, let's talk about one of those AFC North teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers, playing at Jeff Saturday's Indianapolis Colts tonight. The line is Colts -2.5. The total, which is perhaps forewarning of what type of spectacle this will be, is 39.5 in a dome. Anything you like in this game?
Yeah, give me Steelers. I don't know why this hasn't closer to a pick 'em. I get it. There's not a ton of, there's not a ton of equity push pulling under 3, but I think plus 120 anything on the money line is a misprice. This should be close to a pick 'em by my numbers. Pittsburgh's D line at full strength has a wonderful matchup against the Colts pass protection unit that is hugely questionable. You have a statuesque quarterback in Matt Ryan who's going to be under duress all game long. Excited to see what TJ Watt, Cam Hayward in particular can do in this contest. So Pittsburgh's defense, I think, matches up well against what Indy is doing right now and what they're capable of doing. And then on the flip side, the Pittsburgh offense has, last 2 weeks has found their footing. They had a nice they made the quarterback switch. They had a nice little stretch where Pickett was healthy and they were at home for a couple of games. I thought they tweaked some aspects of what they were trying to do, and I thought the results were pretty telling. They lose 37-30 last time out to the Cincinnati Bengals, a game where people would point and be like, that wasn't even that close. Like, wasn't that good? No, that was a very competitive game. The ball bounces a little differently towards the end of that fourth quarter. I think the Steelers are knocking on the door to win that game, and I think if you can hang 30 on a good Bengals defense, then you should be able to come in here and put scoreboard pressure on a Colts team that, again, you have a huge advantage of when their offense is on the field. So Steelers here for my money. I think they ought to be, small money line favorites here. So the fact that I'm getting plus 125 is music to my ears.
Yeah, I think this game should be pick. Yeah. I think the Steelers neutral field are slightly better than the Colts, I think. Steelers might have the better quarterback, honestly, at this point. And I think there was the thought that maybe Jeff Saturday or something had happened where the offensive line was fixed after what they did against the Raiders. But I think the Philadelphia game showed that was more about the Raiders having the worst pass rush in the league and not being able to really stop the run unless they're playing Seattle for some reason, because the Colts couldn't really run the ball against Philadelphia, particularly in the second half. And Philadelphia showed last night that their defense right now is in a little bit of a state. So you would have expected a bit more out of the Colts. So, yeah, I just think that the Steelers now with TJ Watt back, TJ Watt, he's certainly not been talked about as much this year because he missed so much time, but he is in the same caliber of player as Micah Parsons, as Nick Bosa, guys who are DPOY mix, and Minka Fitzpatrick is back and he's playing much better than he did last year and gives them another all-pro level player on that defense. So Steelers clearly have the better defense. I think the offenses are basically a wash at this point. So I agree. In terms of props, my favorite one on the board, like to go a little more niche, a little more obscure, some low totals. Najee Harris over 18.5 receiving yards. The Colts, for all their sins, they are very effective at bottling up the run. And the Steelers have never been particularly efficient running offense with Najee Harris. But the Colts are bottom 5 in DVOA defending running backs in the passing game. So I think that Najee Harris, who's had 6 targets 2 of the past 3 weeks, think that he should be able to get over 18.5 receiving yards. Any angles on the player side you like in the game?
No, but I like that general look. The Steelers went into their bye with just a disheartening season's over, forget about it, pack it up, kind of a loss to the Eagles. And it did feel like some of the scrutiny that the outside world had on that offense was addressed, because they have looked very different. They're trying to do different things coming out of their bye. Obviously, only getting 20 points, but gaining almost 400 yards against the Saints was a solid. And then, backing that up with a solid performance against the Bengals. I do think that just in general, there's not a long-term answer there with Matt Canada as the O coordinator, but certainly what he's done the last couple of weeks is a far, far, far cry better than what we saw from him through the middle of the season, which was just dreadful.
Yep, no, I'm with you. There's not much left on the Matt Canada is good. Not much meat on that bone. All right, before we talk about World Cup, if you want more betting, DFS, and fantasy advice right before kickoff tonight, tune into our NFL on NBC Sports YouTube channel at 7 p.m. Eastern as Vaughn Dalzell, Lawrence Jackson, and Kyle Dvoracek answer your questions prior to kickoff between the Steelers and the Colts. This is a game that you'll want to have a bet on to get you through it. Let's talk about the World Cup. And let's start off by talking about if you've changed any priors that you had on these World Cup contenders before the first week. As we look now at the favorites in the World Cup, Brazil, they shortened from plus 300 to plus 225. That's largely because Argentina are in a little bit of strife, who were on their side of the draw. France also firm from plus 650 to plus 550. England drift out, and then Spain are the other big firmer now that they look like they're in the box seat of winning their group after Germany lost to Japan, although that might be a little bit of a poison chalice with the path that opens up. What do you make of the favorites on the board right now?
I agree on their sheet. I think I might have broken. Yeah, they have a 7-0 gold advantage on their sheet versus Costa Rica, so that makes their numbers look a little bit more impressive than they actually are. And you're right, they would draw a quarterfinal head-to-head with Brazil if Brazil wins Group G, and they carry through as winners of Group E. So that is a little troubling. I agree 100% with the market firming on France. I think actually it probably needed to move in a little more, because France now basically in complete cruise control to win Group D. They find themselves on the weaker half of the bracket. And weird as it is to say, the loss of guys like Pogba and Benzema specifically, seems to have kind of taken a little bit of the pressure off of this squad and kind of given some of the younger players a little bit more of a leadership role. And that looks to be exactly what France needed to have kind of a good, second effort here after winning the World Cup last time out. So very, very, very impressed with what I've seen from France. And I think I came in with I thought the market was way, way, way too high on that team, and that they might not even win Group D as we got into this, the start of this World Cup. And I've completely pivoted to now I think they should be clear second choice. And the fact that they're kind of in that muddled price there with Spain and Argentina, I don't think is reflecting the fact that they now have a very favorable path, in my opinion, to get to a final against whoever emerges from what is a very, very challenging top half of that bracket. The fly in the ointment, of course, for France is if Argentina come through as runner-ups of Group C. And then for the second consecutive World Cup, we get France-Argentina in the first round of knockouts. And it seems like that is not entirely off the table. Poland-Argentina is going to be an absolute must-watch match to kind of determine the fate of both, of basically the rest of the knockouts kind of come down to that Poland-Argentina match. You got to have that one circled. I think there's nothing, nothing has really changed my opinion in terms of who's going to ultimately compete. But I will point to one team that I think has a very favorable draw opening up for them, and that is the Netherlands. The Netherlands win Group A if they can close serve here in their final, their final group match, and they would get the runner-ups of Group B, which right now would be Iran, could be the United States, could potentially sneak in there, and then they would play the winners of Group C versus the runners-up of Group D. that whole little quad there, Netherlands would be huge money line favorites against all of those opponents, all the way to a semifinal matchup against potentially whoever emerges from that mess of Spain and Brazil in the quarterfinals. So Netherlands is one to circle and look out for. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like it in terms of the path. I think the problem is that they're just not very good.
There's the problem.
XG has been a disaster for the Netherlands, but I think the thing there is that I think the World Cup, more than I guess a lot of other competitions, you can more throw out performance in the group stage. A lot of teams recently who've gone on to win the World Cup haven't looked impressive in the group stage at all. Spain in 2010 looked disastrous in the group stage, and it looked like it was going to be a national crisis, and then they won the tournament. Italy in 2006, same thing. Germany weren't impressive really in their World Cup win in 2014 until they got to basically the quarterfinals. I think it was Algeria really could have knocked them out. So I just think that the nature of the tournament, the fact that particularly this season this World Cup where, teams haven't had the same build-up time together. Right. I think that's why I really like Spain in this tournament overall. If they didn't have such a difficult draw, is that you can see when you watch Spain that Pedri, Gavi, and Busquets, they all play together every week for Barcelona. They have so much more continuity and just kind of rationality to the way that they build up. Whereas I look at a team like Argentina, who, like, I'm heavily invested in Messi to win the Golden Ball, which he kind of brought back to life with his goal against Mexico. Yeah. But having watched those two games, like Argentina, they did not look good at all. And maybe they'll figure something out. But at the moment, there is no build up into play. It's basically just kick it out to Di Maria on the right wing and hope that he does something, or just pass it to Messi and hope that he does something. Like, there's a lot of dependence on individual brilliance, as opposed to, say, I think the more kind of cohesive approach of a Brazil or a Spain. Argentina have looked good defensively is the one thing to hold on to. But yeah, I do want, given that I am on Messi to win the Golden Ball, I do want Argentina to finish second in the group, because I need to kill the Batman. I need to kill Kylian Mbappe, and I want the head-to-head. I want Kylian's path to be as hard as possible, and if that means that I have to throw Lionel Messi's body in front of him, so be it. I'll take that risk. So that's what I'm cheering for, is a path where Argentina finishes second. But what do you think about Argentina? And then also, to close out the big game, what do you think of Portugal, Uruguay?
Ooh, yeah, that one's going to be awesome this afternoon. I'm very excited for that. I agree with your takes there. The funny thing is, like, we've seen these teams, almost all these teams now play twice. The standard way of doing sort of international soccer, or really any soccer handicapping, is looking at like XG or XG plus, just as an idea of sort of the true strength of the offense and defense of these teams. And so far, it has been just chaos. Like, you look at an XG result, like what was the XG of a given game versus how the game played out, and it's just like the variability and the variance has been unbelievably high. And this is this is a unique situation. World Cup is always unique. This one's even more so. And so, there's going to be at some point a stretch where we're like, oh yeah, okay. Now these teams are playing closer to priors, and these results are coming in, closer to the XG predicted outcomes. And when we get to that point, I think there's going to be money to be made if the market has overreacted to any of the results we've seen so far. And so I think that's kind of the key thing that I want to keep my eye on going forward. I don't rate Portugal especially highly at all. I think Uruguay absolutely was a contender coming into this tournament, and now they are desperately in need of a result. If Uruguay loses this match, they are effectively, staring at a very narrow path to advance. And so I think, you're going to get a very honest effort out of Uruguay in this one. And now that they have sort of that one, kind of get reacquainted with everybody's roles, responsibilities game out of the way against South Korea, I think they're dangerous against Portugal, and I would make them, a little bit better than the market right now in terms of coming away with the outright win. I'm looking at plus 313 for Uruguay to win. I would expect anything, better than 3-1 to be a bet.
Yep, I like that. I think Portugal, one of the strangest teams, because on paper they look absolutely loaded. They're kind of the Brooklyn Nets of this World Cup, where just looking at the names like Bernardo Silva and João Felix is kind of an the thought on this team. Obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo and then Bruno Fernandes, who's stuck playing with Cristiano Ronaldo across both forms of soccer, club and country. So they are loaded with talent. Defensively, it wasn't great in the first game. And again, there's just doesn't seem like there's a lot of cohesion. I think Ronaldo, for pretty much everyone he plays for, is more of a problem than he's worth, particularly when you have so much in reserve behind him. So, yeah, I would definitely skew Uruguay at the price. Just last thing that I want to touch on is I would not write off Germany in this World Cup because I think that they are going to benefit from finishing second in their group over Spain. I think the second spot was what you wanted in that group, and particularly given that Belgium looked terrible and may not even get out of the group stage. And then even if they do, it certainly may not be in first place. So there's pretty much no one in Group F that you're terrified of. And Germany might finish second in their group and then get a matchup against Croatia or Morocco, or even if it is Belgium, that's not particularly scary either. Yeah. So I would not write off Germany at all. They showed a bit against Spain. That looked like a game that could have got away from them. They lost 6-0 to Spain in the Nations League a year ago. And so to be able to dig deep, get a result there, they've just got a lot of talent. So would not write off the Germans at plus 1,200. All right. Any last World Cup thoughts before we say goodbye, Drew?
I agree with you on that Germany look. You need them to get away with a convincing win against Costa Rica and build a little bit of momentum heading into the group rounds. And I do also agree with your sentiment of it's fine to write off Belgium. That team's a mess.
Belgium should have lost to Canada by like multiple goals. That was a very fraudulent win, and good to see Eden Hazard taking a beating after his ridiculous comments condemning the Germans. Really came back to bite you, Eden. Why don't you try play 90 minutes and stay on the pitch? All right, don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel, and if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe us. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll be back tomorrow.